G'day! Right, it is time for me to restring my trusty Fender Stratocaster. Now there's a million other things I should be doing today. These are all the boxes I have to unpack. But hey, my guitar needs new strings and I have a gig this weekend, so this is what we're doing. Now if you're not familiar with guitar string gauges, they come in different thicknesses. Lighter strings are easier to play. Thicker strings have, well, arguably a better tone, but it's kind of subjective, but a different tone anyway. There's plenty of great guitar players that use really light gauge strings, but I come from the generation that believed if I used thicker strings I would sound more like Stevie Ray Vaughan, who used like super thick strings. So I've always used, for the last 20 years or so, the Ernie Ball Power Slinkies, which is an 11 gauge set. A little bit heavier than normal, not like super heavy, but just a little bit heavier than average. And earlier this year I dislocated my shoulder and I had some really bad nerve damage, which has made my fingers a lot weaker than they were. So I've been experimenting with lighter gauge strings. I find the regular Slinkies, the 10 gauge, just a little bit too light. Earlier this year, Ernie Ball thankfully brought out the Ultra Slinky, which is sort of in between. It's got the unwound strings of a 10 gauge set, but the wound strings of an 11 gauge set. Those have been good, I've been enjoying those, but they just brought out some new sets again, and included in those are some 9.5s, 9.5s, which are too light for me, and some 10.5s. Now, I've never tried a 10.5 before. I've always only had 10s or 11s. Ernie Ball aren't the first company to bring out 10.5s. GHS have had the Dave Gilmour set for years, and there's probably other 10.5s out there, but I've never actually tried them. So we're going to chuck these on. I'm quite excited about these. We're going to chuck these on my guitar and see how they feel. Alright, ready to go. Let's see how they play. After jamming around on these for a bit, I can confirm that perhaps unsurprisingly they feel slightly heavier than 10s and slightly lighter than 11s, so that verdict is pretty predictable. But I will say that they feel probably slightly heavier than I imagined, maybe a little bit closer to 11s than 10s, which is good for what I would normally want for with my current situation with my injury. I think these may be actually a little bit too heavy for me, and I may consider going back to the 10 to 48s. But overall, it's just nice to have so many options. At this point, I'm thinking of putting 10s on one guitar and 10.5s on another guitar and 11s on another guitar, depending on scale lengths or whether I, use that guitar in E-flat tuning or standard tuning. But it's just great, to have so many different choices of string. We've got all the Ernie Ball strings here. Now there's tons of them. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We do heaps of gear reviews and playing tips, and if you've got anything you'd like to know, leave a comment down below and we will try and get back to you. Alright, see you next time.